Elle stood in the great hall of the council, her hands hidden behind her back so no one could see them shake. The war was over. Her people had lost. 3 years of fighting against the Terran Federation had destroyed their fleet, burned their colonies, and broken their spirit. Now the humans wanted peace, but peace came with a price. The council elder read the terms in a flat voice. Noble daughters of the great houses would marry human military officers. These marriages would tie the two species together and make sure the peace would last. Elle, third daughter of House, had been chosen to wed a human commander named Daniel Cole. She felt sick when she heard the name. A human. She would have to live with a human, sleep under the same roof as a human, call a human her husband. Everything she had learned since childhood told her this was a death sentence. Children grew up hearing stories about humans. They were told that humans never stopped hunting once they started. Other species would give up when they got tired, but humans would keep going for days without rest. They could survive injuries that would kill any. They could keep fighting even when they were bleeding and broken. They called them persistence predators, and they spoke the name with fear. Elle had watched recordings of the war. She had seen human soldiers take wounds that should have dropped them, only to stand back up and keep shooting. She had seen human ships ram into vessels when their weapons failed, the crews choosing to die rather than surrender. These creatures did not know when to quit. They did not know the meaning of enough. And now she would belong to one of them. Her sister Elle came to see her before the ceremony. She was the eldest, already married to a lord safe from this fate. She held Elle's hands and tried to smile. "Perhaps it will not be so bad," Elle said. "Political marriages are often cold. He may be too busy with his duties to bother with you. You can live in separate rooms, avoid each other, exist in the same space without truly being together." Elle wanted to believe her, but she knew better. Humans were strange about relationships. They bonded with everything around them. They kept animals in their homes just for company. They touched each other all the time, hugging and holding hands and pressing their lips together. The thought of a human wanting that kind of closeness with her made her scales ripple with disgust and terror. The wedding happened on a space station between and human territory. Elle wore silver robes that had belonged to her grandmother. She walked into the ceremony hall and saw him for the first time. Daniel Cole was tall, even for a human. His shoulders were broad, his body thick with the muscle that made humans such dangerous fighters. His skin was a warm brown color, his hair cut short and dark. But when their eyes met, Elle saw something she did not expect. He looked nervous. The ceremony was short. They spoke the required words in both languages. A human official and a priest both blessed the union. And then it was done. She was married to a human. She belonged to him now, at least in the eyes of the law. They traveled together to their new home, a diplomatic residence on the human colony world called New Athens. The ship journey took 4 days, and Daniel Cole barely spoke to her. He stayed on his side of their shared quarters. He did not try to touch her. He did not even look at her very often. Elle did not know what to make of this. Was he planning something? Was he waiting for the right moment to show his true nature? She stayed awake through the nights, watching the door, expecting him to come for her. He never did. When they arrived at New Athens, a vehicle took them to the residence. It was a simple building by standards, but she was told it was considered fine housing for humans. There was a main living area, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a small garden behind the structure. Daniel Cole stood in the center of the living area and looked at her with those strange green eyes. His expression was serious but not threatening. "I know this is not what either of us wanted," he said. His voice was deeper than she had expected but quiet, gentle almost. "I want you to know that I will not force anything on you. This room here is yours. The bedroom through that door is yours as well. I will take the smaller room down the hall." Elle stared at him. "We will not share a sleeping space." "Not unless you want to." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I know your people have different customs than mine. I know you have probably heard many frightening things about humans. I cannot change what I am, but I can promise you that you are safe here. No one will hurt you in this house, especially not me." She did not understand. This was not how it was supposed to happen. She had prepared herself for demands, for aggression, for the violent dominance that humans showed in battle. Instead, this human was offering her space, privacy, choice. "I do not understand," she said finally. Daniel Cole smiled, and the expression changed his whole face. The hard lines softened. He looked almost kind. "That is okay," he said. "We have time to figure this out." He turned and walked toward the hall, leaving her alone in the living area. At the doorway, he stopped and looked back at her. "There is food in the kitchen. I checked before we arrived to make sure there were things you could eat safely. If you need anything, my room is the second door on the left, but I will not come to you unless you ask me to." Then he was gone. Elle stood there for a long time, trying to understand what had just happened. She had been given a predator as a husband, and the predator had handed her the keys to her own cage. He had given her a room of her own, a door she could lock, space where he would not follow. It had to be a trick. Humans were clever. Everyone knew that. They planned and schemed and played games with their enemies. This kindness was probably just a strategy, a way to make her lower her guard before he struck. She would not fall for it. She would stay alert, stay ready, stay afraid. Because fear was the only thing that had kept her alive this long, and she was not about to abandon it now. But as she lay in her new bed that night, in her own room with a locked door between her and the human, she could not help but wonder. What if she was wrong about him? What if there was more to Daniel Cole than the monster she had imagined? She pushed the thought away and closed her eyes. She could not afford to hope. Hope was dangerous. But somewhere deep in her chest, a tiny spark had already begun to glow. The first weeks passed slowly. Elle stayed in her room most of the time, coming out only when she needed food or water. She moved through the residence like a ghost, always listening for Daniel's footsteps, always ready to run back to her safe space if he came too close. But he never came close. He kept his promise with perfect consistency. He did not enter her room without asking first. He did not touch her without clear permission. When they passed each other in the hallway, he would nod politely and step aside to give her more space. She began to watch him, the way a small animal might watch a larger predator that seemed to have lost interest in hunting. She learned his patterns. He woke early every morning for physical training, running and lifting weights in the small exercise area behind the residence. He spent his days in meetings and administrative work at the military headquarters. He came home in the evenings, often carrying documents he would review at the kitchen table until late at night. He was always tired. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, in the way his shoulders slumped when he thought no one was looking. The war had ended, but its weight still pressed down on him. One evening, she came out of her room and found him in the kitchen. He was standing over a pot on the heating surface, stirring something that smelled surprisingly good. He looked up when he heard her. "I made too much food again," he said. "It is a vegetable stew. I checked the medical database to make sure everything in it is safe for digestion. Would you like to share it with me?" She hesitated. Sharing food was meaningful in culture. It was a gesture of trust, a sign of alliance. Did he know that? Was this some kind of calculated move? But his face showed nothing clever or scheming. He just looked like a man who had made too much dinner and did not want to eat alone. She sat down at the table. He served her a bowl and sat across from her with his own portion. The stew was warm and filling, with flavors she did not recognize but found pleasant. "My grandmother used to make this," he said, almost to himself. "Whenever someone in our family was having a hard time, she would cook a big pot of stew. She said warm food was the first step toward feeling better." Elle looked at him. "You speak of your family often." "Do I?" He seemed surprised. I suppose I miss them. They are back on Earth very far from here, about 6 months of travel. You chose to be stationed so far away from them. I did not have much choice during the war. Now that it is over, I could request a transfer to somewhere closer. He paused, looking down at his bowl. But I have responsibilities here now. She understood that he meant her. She was one of his responsibilities. The thought should have made her angry, but the way he said it held no disrespect. "Tell me about Earth," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. His face lit up in a way she had not seen before. He talked about blue oceans that covered most of the planet, about forests so green they hurt the eyes, about mountains that reached up into the clouds. He described cities with buildings that scraped the sky and small villages where everyone knew their neighbors by name. He told her about the many different cultures on Earth, the hundreds of languages, the countless traditions that somehow all existed together on one world. "It sounds very chaotic," she observed. "It is," he admitted with a small laugh. "Humans are a messy species. We argue constantly. We fight among ourselves over foolish things. We cannot agree on anything for very long. But we also create beautiful things. Art, music, stories. We fall in love and raise families and build communities. We are full of contradictions." She found herself leaning forward, interested despite her caution. "Why did your people start the war with mine?" His expression grew serious. "Honestly, I think it was fear. Your empire was growing quickly. Some of your border territories were getting close to human space. Our leaders saw a threat and decided to act before it became bigger." He shook his head. "I am not saying it was right. Many people on both sides died because of politics and paranoia." "You do not believe the war was justified?" "I believe wars are rarely justified," he said quietly. "But I am a soldier. I follow orders. I protect the people under my command. I try to cause as little suffering as possible. That is all any of us can do." This was not what she expected from a human military commander. Her own people's leaders spoke of honor and glory and the righteousness of their cause. This human spoke of doubt and duty and the wish to do less harm. Their evening meals together became a regular thing after that night. Daniel always cooked. He always checked that the food would be safe for her to eat. He always gave her the choice to leave if she felt uncomfortable, and he never seemed hurt when she retreated to her room early. He asked her questions about her culture, and he listened carefully when she answered. He wanted to know about her childhood, her education, her dreams before the war changed everything. Nobody had asked about her dreams in a very long time. One night she found him sitting alone in the dark, staring out the window at the strange stars of this foreign sky. She could see tension in his shoulders, a weariness he usually hid well. "What troubles you?" she asked softly. He did not turn around. "Just memories. Sometimes they are harder to escape than others." She sat down nearby, keeping the comfortable distance that had become normal between them. "You fought in the war." "I did." His voice was hollow. "I gave orders that killed people. I watched soldiers under my command die because of choices I made. I have seen things I cannot unsee. I have done things I cannot undo. Yet you show me kindness." He finally looked at her and she saw something raw and wounded in his eyes. "The war is over. Hatred will not bring back the dead. The only thing I can do now is try to be better, to build something instead of destroying." Elle felt something shift inside her chest. This human, this creature she had been taught to fear, carried the same wounds as her own people. He grieved. He doubted. He struggled with his conscience. For the first time since coming to this place, she felt something other than fear when she looked at him. She felt curiosity. And underneath that, buried so deep she almost missed it, she felt the smallest beginning of warmth. 3 months passed since the wedding. Elle no longer hid in her room. She moved freely through the residence now, comfortable in spaces she once feared to enter. She still kept her own bedroom, and Daniel still respected that boundary, but the invisible walls between them had slowly come down. She learned many things about humans during those months. They had a strange relationship with temperature. Daniel had quietly adjusted the heating system to make the residence warmer than normal human settings. When she asked him about it, he simply said he had noticed her shivering and wanted her to be comfortable. Were cold-blooded. He had researched her species and made changes without being asked. She learned that he had nightmares. Some nights she would hear him cry out in his sleep, sounds of fear and pain that echoed through the walls. He never spoke of these dreams in the morning, and she understood he was ashamed of what he saw as weakness. She did not see it as weakness at all. She learned that he had a habit of bringing her small gifts. They were never expensive or grand, just little things he thought she might like. A piece of fruit from the market that reminded him of something from her. A small plant for her window in a pot that matched her favorite color. A translation device that made her studies of human language easier. One evening she held up his latest gift, a small crystal that caught the light and scattered tiny rainbows across her palm. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Do what?" "Give me things, spend your money on my comfort. You gain nothing from it." He looked genuinely confused by the question. "I do not need to gain anything. You are my wife. Taking care of you is just what I do." In political arrangements, this behavior is not typical. "I do not know how to act differently," he admitted. "This is how I was raised. You take care of the people in your life, even when it is hard, even when they cannot give you anything back. My grandmother used to say that love is not a transaction, it is a commitment." Love, the word struck her like a blow. Nobody had used that word about their arrangement before. "You do not love me," she said carefully. "No," he agreed, "but I respect you. I care about you, and maybe with enough time deeper feelings could grow. That is how it works sometimes. You do not always start with love. Sometimes you build it slowly, piece by piece, through 1,000 small moments." Before she could respond, a loud alarm shattered the quiet evening. Daniel's communication device lit up with urgent messages. His whole demeanor changed in an instant. The gentle man who spoke of love and commitment disappeared. In his place stood the military commander, sharp and focused and ready for battle. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward the door. "Lock the residence when I leave. Do not open it for anyone." "What is happening?" "There has been an attack on the diplomatic area. Insurgents. Some of your people do not want peace with humans." He was gone before she could say anything else. Elle locked the door as he had told her. Then she waited. Her hearts pounded in tandem, the dual rhythm faster than she had ever felt it. She heard explosions in the distance. She saw flashes of weapons fire through the windows. She tried to access news broadcasts, but all communications were blocked. All she could do was sit in the dark and wonder if Daniel Cole would come back alive. The hours stretched on forever. Morning came slowly, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Finally, just as the sun cleared the horizon, the door opened. Daniel stumbled through it, and Elle felt her chest squeeze tight with something she could not name. He was covered in blood. Some of it was clearly his own. His uniform was torn in several places. He leaned heavily to one side, favoring injuries she could not see. "It is okay," he said. His voice was rough with exhaustion. "The situation is under control." She moved toward him without thinking. Her hands reached for his wounds before she could stop herself. "You need medical attention." "I will be fine. Humans heal quickly. I just need rest." "You are bleeding from many wounds." "They are not deep, mostly." "You are lying." He laughed weakly, then winced as the movement hurt him. "Okay, maybe not entirely shallow." She helped him to the seating area and lowered him carefully onto the cushions. She found medical supplies in the bathroom and brought them back to where he sat. She began cleaning his wounds with careful, precise movements. "You know medical procedures?" he asked. "Every noble daughter learns basic field medicine. In case of emergencies. She examined a deep cut on his arm. This one needs proper treatment. Human medical technology can fix it easily. In the morning. Right now, I just want to sit here and be grateful that I am still alive. She continued her work, sealing what she could with the supplies available, bandaging what she could not close. He watched her the whole time with an expression she could not read. "You were worried about me," he said finally. "Do not be ridiculous. Your hands are shaking." She looked down and saw that he was right. Her fingers trembled as they worked on his wounds. "I was uncertain what would happen to me if you died. My position would become difficult without your protection. That is not why you are shaking." She met his eyes and found that she could not maintain the lie. "No, it is not." Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of a change that had been building for months. She had stopped fearing him somewhere along the way. She could not say exactly when it happened, but the creature in front of her now was not the monster from her nightmares. He was just a man, wounded, tired, looking at her like she was the most important thing in the universe. "Elle," he said softly. It was the first time he had used her name without formal titles. "You should rest," she said, pulling back slightly. "We can talk about everything else when you have recovered." He caught her hand gently. His grip was warm but loose. She could pull away if she wanted to. He always made sure she could pull away. "I am not going anywhere," he said. "However long you need, whatever you decide, I will be here." She did not pull away. She sat beside him as the morning light grew stronger, her hand in his. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she did not feel afraid. Daniel's recovery took 2 weeks. Human bodies could heal from terrible damage, but even their famous strength had limits. Elle found herself becoming his caretaker. She prepared his meals. She changed his bandages. She made sure he actually rested instead of trying to return to work before he was ready. Something changed between them during those 2 weeks. The careful distance they had kept for so long disappeared. She sat beside him while he slept, reading from her tablet or simply watching the rise and fall of his chest. When his nightmares came, he would reach for her hand, and she would let him hold it until the shaking stopped. One afternoon, she asked about the scars on his body. She had seen many of them while treating his wounds. Some were old and faded to thin white lines. Others were newer and angrier. She traced a mark on his shoulder with her fingertip. "This one is different from the others." "Knife wound," he said. "My first real combat mission, many years ago. A militia leader got close enough to cut me before I stopped him." "And this one," she touched a raised line across his ribs. "Shrapnel, the battle at Corvus Station. We lost half our team that day." "You remember where each one came from." "Every scar teaches something. Every scar reminds me of someone I lost or a mistake I will never make again." He paused and looked at her. "Do scar. Not in ways you can see. Our scales grow back completely, even after serious damage, but we still remember the injuries. They leave marks that others cannot see." "Scars of the mind," he said quietly. "Those are often worse than the ones on the body. They do not fade the same way." She thought about her own invisible wounds, the terror of the war, the shame of losing, the grief of watching friends and family die under human weapons, the fear that had shaped her whole life, fear of a species she had been taught would destroy everything she loved. And now here she sat with one of those terrible humans, and she felt safer than she had felt in years. "I have something to tell you," she said, "a confession." He waited, patient as always. "When I learned about the arranged marriage, I thought about ending my own life." The words came out flat and hard. "I believed death would be better than belonging to a human. I thought you would be cruel. I thought you would use me and throw me away. I thought you would strip away every piece of my dignity until nothing was left." His expression shifted to something between pain and sadness. "Elle, let me finish. I was wrong. Everything I believed about humans was wrong, or at least not the whole truth. You have shown me more kindness in these months than some of my own people have shown me in my whole life. You have given me choices when you could have made demands. You have given me space when you could have claimed ownership. You have given me respect when you could have given me contempt. She reached out and touched his face. Her palm was cool against his warm cheek. I do not understand why you are this way. It goes against everything I was taught, but I am grateful, grateful for you. He leaned into her touch and closed his eyes. I was afraid too, he admitted. When they told me about the arrangement, not afraid of you, but afraid of failing, afraid of making things worse instead of better, afraid of being another human who proved the right about us. You have not failed. I tried to be the kind of person my grandmother would be proud of. She always said that the true measure of a person is how they treat those who have less power than them. You came into this marriage with no power at all. Everything was stacked against you. The least I could do was not make it worse. You did much more than that. He opened his eyes and looked at her. She saw herself reflected in those strange green depths, not as a defeated enemy or a political tool, but as something precious, something valued. What do you want, Elle? He asked. Not what your people want or what the treaties require. What do you want for yourself? Nobody had ever asked her that question. Her whole life had been shaped by duty and obligation. Her own desires had never mattered. I want to know what it feels like, she said slowly, to be loved by someone who chose to love me. Not because they were ordered to, not because it was useful, but because they looked at me and saw something worth cherishing. I think, he said carefully, that I might already be falling in love with you. It happened so slowly that I almost did not notice. But these past 2 weeks, lying here, watching you take care of me, I realized something. I cannot imagine my life without you anymore. Her heart stuttered in their rhythm. You barely know me. I know that you are brave enough to face your fears. I know that you are kind enough to care for someone who should be your enemy. I know that you are honest even when honesty is hard. I know that you laugh when you think nobody is listening, and the sound makes something inside me feel lighter. I know that you deserve better than what either of our peoples offered you, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to give you what you deserve. Moisture gathered at the corners of her eyes. Did not cry the way humans did, but strong emotions could still bring tears. I do not know how to do this, she whispered. I do not know how to love without being afraid. Then we will learn together, he said. One day at a time, one small kindness at a time, until the fear becomes something else. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. This was a gesture of deep intimacy and culture, something shared only between those who trusted each other completely. He seemed to understand. He stayed perfectly still, letting her control the contact. Together, she agreed. They stayed like that for a long time, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air. Outside, the sun moved across the sky and shadows shifted across the room. Inside, two people from worlds that had tried to destroy each other found something neither of them had expected to find. They found hope. 1 year after the wedding, Elle stood before a great assembly of humans and they had gathered to celebrate the anniversary of the peace treaty, and she had been asked to speak about the marriage program that was meant to bind the two species together. Daniel stood in the crowd, watching her with quiet pride. They had shared a bedroom for 6 months now, not because the treaty required it, but because they wanted to, because they had built something real from the ashes of war. Elle cleared her throat and began to speak. When I was told I would marry a human, I was terrified. I grew up hearing stories about your species, your endurance, your refusal to stop, your capacity for violence. I expected a monster. I prepared myself to survive something terrible. Instead, I found a man who asked what I wanted, who gave me space when I needed it and stayed close when I needed that instead, who cooked me meals and brought me small gifts and learned about my culture so he could understand me better, who held my hand through dark nights and never once treated me like something he owned. Humans have a saying, love is not a transaction, it is a commitment. My husband taught me what those words mean. He committed to me before he knew if I could ever love him back. He committed to my dignity when there was no benefit in doing so. He committed to being the kind of person he wanted to be, whether I ever appreciated it or not. I stand before you today not as a who was conquered by humans. I stand here as a woman who was transformed by love. The war taught us to fear each other. The peace has given us the chance to know each other. And in knowing, we find that we are not so different after all. We both grieve. We both dream. We both want connection and meaning and purpose. We both carry scars from the battles we have survived. But we also both have the power to grow, to change, to build something new from what was broken. She paused and looked at Daniel. He smiled at her, and she felt strength flow into her heart. The political marriages were meant to keep peace through obligation, but they can become something more. They can become bridges between our peoples, examples of what is possible when we choose understanding instead of suspicion, kindness instead of cruelty, love instead of fear. My husband once told me that humans are contradictory. You fight among yourselves, but you also create beautiful things. You destroy, but you also build. You hate, but you also love. I think are the same way. All thinking beings contain these opposites within themselves. The question is which part of ourselves we choose to feed, which impulses we grow and which we starve. My husband chose to feed the part of himself that could feel compassion. He chose to starve the part that might have claimed me as a prize of war. That choice, made every single day for a full year, has changed both of our lives. I ask all of you, human and alike, to make the same choice, not just in political arrangements but in every meeting with another person. Choose to see the one in front of you as worthy of respect. Choose to offer kindness even when it costs you something. Choose to build rather than destroy. That is how we will truly honor this peace, not through treaties and obligations alone, but through the countless small decisions that shape who we are and who we can become. Together. The assembly hall filled with applause. Humans clapped their hands while rattled their scales in appreciation. The two sounds were different, but somehow they created harmony. Elle stepped down from the platform and made her way through the crowd. Daniel was waiting for her. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. "That was beautiful," he said. "I meant every word." "I know you did." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, a human gesture she had grown to love. Ready to go home. Home. The word used to mean the distant halls of House on Prime. Now it meant a simple residence on New Athens, shared with a human who had shown her what love could be. "Yes," she said, "let us go home." They walked out together, hand in hand. Elle thought about how strange life could be. She had come to this marriage expecting darkness and found light, expecting cruelty and found compassion, expecting a monster and found the best person she had ever known. The fear that once defined how she saw humans had transformed into something completely different: trust, respect, partnership, love. It had started with one human, who decided that a woman from an enemy species deserved kindness. Perhaps that was the real lesson of their story. Not that humans were good or bad, safe or dangerous, but that every person, no matter what species, could choose who they wanted to be. Daniel had chosen to be a man worthy of love, and in doing so, he had given Elle the courage to become a woman capable of giving it. The future stretched before them, uncertain and full of challenges. Their people still held suspicions and old anger. The wounds of war would take many years to fully heal. But as long as there were people willing to build bridges instead of walls, willing to offer open hands instead of weapons, willing to love instead of hate, there was hope. And hope, Elle had learned, was perhaps the most human thing of all. She looked at Daniel as they walked toward their transport vehicle. He caught her gaze and smiled. It was the same smile he had given her on their first night together when he had promised she would be safe. She had not believed him then. She believed him now. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about how wrong I was," she said. "About you, about humans, about everything. And now I am thinking about how glad I am that I was wrong, and how grateful I am that you gave me the chance to discover the truth." He stopped walking and turned to face her. Right there in front of everyone, he leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers, the gesture of complete trust. He had learned it for her. He had learned so many things for her. "I love you," he said quietly. "I love you too," she answered. They stood like that for a moment, two people from worlds that had tried to destroy each other. Then they continued walking, side by side, toward whatever came next. The war was over, the fear was over, something new had begun. And Elle, who had once believed she would rather die than marry a human, had never felt more alive.